Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien, personal development coach, heart math practitioner, dog photographer, and entrepreneur. In this podcast, I share tools, strategies, and amazing guest interviews to help you improve your mindset and your well-being with a sprinkle of fun and probably some mention of dogs along the way. So without further ado, let's squeeze the day. Hi folks, welcome to episode 44 of the podcast. Today, my guest is activist and author Devin Moore, and we're talking about bullying. So first up, a little bit about Devin. At the age of 14, Devin became the founder of Race to Speak Up, an anti-bullying organization. And he works to educate the youth about bullying prevention and how to be upstanders, which is something we're going to be talking more about in the podcast. Devin is a published author, and in his book, Devin Speaks Up, alongside spreading a message of unity, he teaches young people how to speak to a trusted person about being bullied. And we're going to find out more about this, but Devin also goes into schools and workplaces to help educate people about bullying prevention. So a really inspirational young man. So welcome to the podcast, Devin.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
I'm very good. I'm very good today.
Awesome. I wish everybody listening could see you, because you have this wonderful t-shirt on that says "Try a little kindness." And I think it's a lovely touch for our conversation today. Devin, can you start us off by sharing a bit about what bullying is and what it might look like? I know this has been quite a personal experience for you. So could you just say a little bit more about that for me?
Yeah, of course, I definitely can. So specifically with bullying, let's first just start off with the actual definition, and then we're going to go a little more into it. So bullying is defined as unwanted and aggressive behavior aimed at the target. So what this could look like is it could look like a power imbalance. For example, someone who is smaller being hated on or targeted by someone who's bigger. It's meant to harm and it's meant to inflict pain, and it's repeated. It's not just a one-time thing. And it's done for a specific reason. Now, where my bullying story begins is, as you said, when I was 14 years old. So when I was at that age, I went through a lot of bullying, specifically with three tormentors, three boys who decided to they did cyberbullying, it was physical bullying, it was verbal bullying, you name it, they basically did it. It was a hard time. It was racism. All of it was racism. They were targeting me for a specific reason, and that reason was because of my skin color. But on top of that, they saw me as an intelligent Black person too, which really did something to them. And they wanted to hurt me. There was people who I thought was my friends, but they stabbed me in the back. And though I went through that hard time, though I went through the extremely hard, difficult and negative effects, which is anxiety. This is what I personally went through, was anxiety. I went through paranoia. I was very sad, because what 14-year-old can go through that and come out all rainbows and happiness? No, it was a hard time. And though I did go through all of that pain and trauma, I still knew that I wanted to do something that really effectively put an end to this, or at the bare minimum, lessen the amount of bullying that happened all over this world, because I knew exactly what that felt like, and I did not want others to go through any formation of that pain. Thus leading me to my Race to Speak Up anti-bullying organization. So I created that when I was 14 years old, after not only seeing my personal bullying story, but seeing others going through what bullying is, all the devastating effects, all of its impact. And I knew that I wanted to create a platform for myself to educate students and give my Race to Speak Up Against Bullying workshops, so that we can further educate and really give effective solutions, calls to action, different activities, bullying reenactments. Literally, we had a lot of different things that are encompassed in the workshops. So when it comes to that, that's a lot of my work. And now I know you said to kind of just start off with defining bullying. I know I kind of went into a couple of other things, but I'll just keep it at that, and then I'll get back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing your story. I'm sorry you went through that. it's awful, and I think it happens. I know your experience was being 14 and being at school and being bullied, but bullying happens everywhere. I mean, bullying happens at schools, at universities, and it happens in workplaces for adults as well. And I know that's something you talk to people about. I'm curious about how you address bullying in workplace situations.
Yeah, of course, I could definitely talk about that. So specifically, not only do my workshops, not only are they mainly focused on youth, but I do offer Race to Speak Up Against Bullying workshops for adults. Because, as you said, it's not just in schools, it's not just in universities, it's not just it's all over, and it can happen at different ages. So specifically, what we do is oftentimes I'm really just called in to give my workshops or a presentation or just speak about my experience as well as about effective solutions to this bullying problem. So what I do with my workshops specifically for people in the workplace environment is I kind of really open up I definitely open up the conversation in a very simplified way by just giving an overall definition of bullying. Then we dive deep into the statistics, what it can look like. That beginning part, that looks very similar in all of my workshops. But from there, once we specifically are diving in deep to the workplace bullying, I tell them what it can look like, specifically in workplaces, to see if they've ever really thought of or maybe seen it, maybe have gone through it. I also let them know that there are certain things that you can do. Like there's ways that it's like you're supposed to report, you're allowed to report when you see instances of hate, microaggressions, micro assaults, or straight up racism, straight up homophobia, straight up things that are against religion. You're allowed to report those things. I know it may depend on the work environment, but when it comes to bullying, you do need evidence of these things actually happening. So if someone is trying to say, if it's maybe social bullying that turned into cyberbullying, and someone is trying to degrade you or put you down online so that they can get ahead in the workplace environment, you're allowed to screenshot that and email that to your boss. You're allowed to do those types of things. So those are the things that I kind of really highlight, but also we do role playing or reenactments. So for example, maybe it's a case where I am giving a bully, react to this bullying scenario, except I want you to think through the perspective of a boss, think through the perspective of an employee, think through the perspective of someone who, what is it called? Oh, customer, excuse me. A customer that's walking in and just happens to see what the employees are doing to each other. Think through the different perspectives and see what you can do to help the target of bullying in that case. Those are a lot of the things that we really try to highlight so that people not only are thinking, but also are slowly processing how we can develop calls to actions to further put an end to this bullying situation.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of really great information in there. I have lots of questions for you. The first one I wanted to ask you comes back to you and you creating your Race to Speak Up campaign. You are currently, as we're recording the podcast, 19. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. So
yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So you're 19. And I think it's amazing what you're doing as a young person. And my question, because this podcast is a lot about mental health, it's a lot about we talk a lot about changing thinking patterns on this podcast, because our thoughts tend to create our emotions, and our reality comes from that. I'm curious as to what the inspiration was and what the thinking was behind you taking the bullying that happened to you and creating this Race to Speak Up campaign. Because a lot of people would have experienced what you'd experienced, come out from the other side of it and chalked it up to, it's something that happened at school, it was awful, and I'm just going to move on. Whereas you took that and you've dealt with it in however you've dealt with the situation at hand, and you've said, I'm going to take this situation that was awful and I'm going to do some good with it, and I'm going to make some change with it. And I am curious as to the thought process behind that? Because not many people would do what you have done.
Yeah, so specifically after that period of time when I was going through the bullying that eventually led me to starting my organization, I mean, I was telling you about the effects that I was going through, but also I was just fed up because I know my parents went out of their way. My Black parents, my parents in general, went out of their way to let me know about how important it is to embrace my skin color, embrace myself, embrace my hair, embrace anything that's a part of me, not just even specifically with my race, but just in general. So I was fed up hearing these people degrade me, talk down on parts of me that are such beautiful things, such beautiful aspects to not only my life, but other people's lives, things that make them them. So I was fed up with that. And I didn't want, I was seeing, I'll be, because this is something I talk about a lot too. Because I talk about suicide or suicide prevention. During that time where I was going through that bullying, I was on social media looking at, I was just scrolling through. I didn't even look up anything. I was just scrolling through. And I saw this collage of literal kids who unalived themselves because of their bullying situation. They made a collage out of it too. A lot of kids who went through that. That made me more fed up. Here, just going on and turning on the TV and watching the news and seeing these kids going back to school with a weapon to get back at their tormentors. That made me fed up. All these things made me fed up. And I was like, you know what? I'm here. I can do something. So let me figure out a way to do that. And then it just led me to kind of like looking up a lot of information about what I could do to start my own platform, my 14-year-old mind, but of course my family helped me with that. And then it just kind of led me to starting my organization because an entrepreneur can do what they want, honestly. With your platform, you can do what I do and create your own workshops. And with those workshops, you can create different types of workshops. Another thing that I have is my Devin Speaks Up book readings. I have my youth entrepreneurship presentations. There's so many different ways that I could go into starting to speak with others. Beyond that, I have a lot of different titles under my belt as the podcast, Race to Speak Up podcast host. So I get the podcasting, the behind the screen webinar host, creating an anti-cyberbullying curriculum. There's so many things that I could do as an entrepreneur. But first, I had to really figure out how to see myself or perceive myself in the light of, I'm definitely worth it. I can do this. And I did, and not only I, but the support of my family and friends, we could do this together. And then that support, that courage really brought me to just prosper and be successful and continue to be successful. So that's really what led me to beginning this journey. And I mean, I know it is oftentimes you go down that dark path, but to that I say, no. I know it's hard. I know it's very easy to go down that dark path, but I understand how important it is to see ourselves in a positive light. I know how important it is to just overall, like, I don't want to feel sad. I know it's natural to feel sad. As humans, we do feel sad, but I don't want to feel sad because someone is specifically hating and targeting me for something that they need to work through.
Oh, absolutely. I think there are two big things I've taken from this. And the first one is that you're talking about being driven by feeling fed up. And I think often we are told in society that getting angry about things, we shouldn't get angry, and it's not, it's not good to get angry. And sometimes if we can take anger and injustice and you can use it to drive you forwards to make positive change, it's such a powerful state of being. And what I hear from your work is that you were fed up and you said, enough, I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a change. And I think it's just absolutely fantastic what you've done. The other thing I heard in there, and I think this is a really great reframe as well, is the 3 boys at school who were bullying you, they have some work to do. People who are bullying and being cruel and picking on other people because they're different or for whatever reason, like for you, these boys were being racist. They need to go and do some work on themselves. I think people's negative comments and other people's kind of hatred and singling out people because they're different in their eyes. They are the people that need to be doing the work, and it says more about them than it does about the person being bullied. And I think it's so important to remember that. I can imagine, though, in a situation where you are being bullied, it's quite difficult to get that perspective shift. And I hear that that's come from a bit of time and some wonderful support from your family. Your parents sound fantastic.
Yes, and I'm very appreciative for my family too, because I know that not everyone has that.
Yeah.
And like kind of just to go off of what you're saying, I think, because a lot of what you're saying is reminding me of another thing. I feel like it's so interesting, not in a good way, but just so interesting how complex this topic of bullying is, because it's like, it's not just bullying, it's cyberbullying, physical, verbal, social, racial, sexual. It's on top of that, there's stuff under that. It's like, okay, how exactly are they doing that? It's your specific instance, it's your environment. The ones exhibiting the bullying behavior, where are they learning this from? Because they're most likely learning this in the home environment. Why are they doing this? It could be a hurt people thing. It could be jealousy. There's so many different, that's why I'm like, I could talk about so many things. Like, I've spoken to middle schoolers, high school, college, people in the workplace environment, multiple people, multiple companies in the workplace environment, multiple of all what I just listed. I've spoken to even elementary, technically, now that I think about it, but I've spoken to a lot people all across the board. And yeah, it's just like they still have this issue of people hating them for a specific reason repeatedly. Like, if it checks off these certain boxes that I always talk about, these certain bullet points that I really could always just talk about, yes, it's bullying. Okay, check off this. It's they are meaning to cause you physical and psychological harm. Check off that box. They are meant to hurt. They're purposely hurting you for a specific reason, for something that is a part of you. Check off that box. And it could be as simple as just wearing glasses, which is something else to do. I'm not doing it right now, but like, it could be such simple reasons for hating on each other. And even with online bullying, because I know we have the internet, and it's like, yes, the internet can be a good thing, but people decide to use that as a bad thing. Even with the pandemic, when people were really isolating and staying at home or whatever environment they were in and going online, they used that computer screen. The computer screen that I'm on right now, they were using their computer screens they had this false sense of security. I always say this. They had this false sense of security being behind that screen, and that empowered them to the point where they said, you know what? I can do this anonymously, or even if it's not anonymously, I can still do this and hurt other people, or cyber stalk other people, cyber whatever other people. That has some very deep, it could cause very deep trauma. And I'm a psychology major at my college at the University of Maryland. So even right now, I'm taking a child psychopathology class, and I'm learning about these different disorders. And me, in my mind, I'm relating it back to bullying. And I'm just like, okay, so anxiety, continuous amounts of anxiety for this amount of time can lead to an anxiety disorder. It could lead to this type of disorder. Continuous amount of depression could lead to this. So there's so many different aspects to it, is just what I'm basically saying.
Yeah.
And overall, it's sad. One word that I'll use to describe bullying is sad.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yes, it's awful. I think it's awful that we feel the need to be so cruel to each other. And to come to your point about cyberbullying, everyone's super brave behind a keyboard, aren't they? And I think often, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this now, I think often people forget how powerful words can be. And you know, all the boundaries come down when you're not directly in front of somebody. So I know that's a big thing. So to take us to the work that you're doing, you've talked about helping people to be upstanders. Can you tell me what it means to be an upstander, and how a person like me, for instance, in the world, how I can be an upstander?
So what an upstander is someone that supports the target of bullying. And it's actually really nice that you asked me about this, because I, more on the recent side, came up with an acronym for it when I was recently speaking to educators at my Race to Speak Up Against Bullying workshop at this National Conference for Race Amity. So just kind of highlighting myself there. Okay, but anyways, so An upstander, my acronym is the upstander. So the THE is an acronym. The T, excuse me, the T stands for take action and support others. The H stands for help the target of bullying. And the E stands for encourages the target to speak up. So those are the three main points that I want people to remember when talking about an upstander. An upstander can look like as simple as something that you can do to be an upstander when you're seeing someone going through bullying, even if they're not your friend, just go up to them and ask them how they're doing. Because, I mean, hey, most 14-year-olds don't really know what they could do to help others. And that's why I really come in to educate. But even if you don't know, something that you can simply do is just support. So say, hey, how are you doing? Is there a way I can help you? Like, I'm here for you. Just talk to me. I'm here. I'm someone that you could trust. I can help you. I can encourage you. I can encourage you to speak up to the teachers, your parent, school staff, or I could go with you and I can do that. Like I can help you speak up to them while being with you. Those are the types of things that an upstander can do, or even if it's coming to an actual physical violent interaction between the one that's exhibiting the bullying behavior and the target of the bullying. And you see the one that's exhibiting the bullying behavior about to turn into a fist fight or something. You can, as long as it's safe, keyword safe, as long as it's safe, go and prevent that before it even gets to the physical violence, where it's like, I saw some statistic where it was like basically the person could just be eating something and then they just stand in between those two and then it calms down the situation for some reason. So that's something you could do. That's apparently a thing. That's something you could do. But overall, just kind of step into it and say, stop, you don't need to do this, and I'm going to help you. You need to stop what you're doing. And you know what? Come on, let's go. We don't need to be here right now. Those are the types of, as long as it's safe, those are the types of things that an upstander will do. Or they'll just like be like, you know what? I'm here. Let me give you a hug. Because you know what? You need some physical support right now. I'm here to help you. Though that long list that I just mentioned, those are the types of things that an upstander can do or would do.
Yeah. And I think hopefully there wouldn't be fist fights in a work environment. It depends where you work, I suppose.
Yeah, that's another.
But I think the advice you've given, and you've said this is advice for 14-year-olds, I think it's equally as valid for 40-year-olds sometimes as well. Sometimes we have to remember, even as adults, we're not all emotionally equipped all the time to be coping with the world. And sometimes people need support from others, and sometimes it's important to check in with a friend or a colleague or someone who looks like they're a bit down, to just say, hey, are you okay? Can I do something for you? Because I think sometimes just being asked that, if you are in a moment where you're feeling sad, can be super uplifting and supportive. So it's little things, and I think there's some really great points you've made there. I want to ask you my last question for you, and I know this takes us into the realm of living in a bit of an ideal world, which we're sadly not in. But how can we be more unified as the human family that we forget we are? And how can we be more accepting of each other, in your view?
I think a lot of what we need in order to be more unified, in order to begin to accept each other's differences, specifically, I think it also comes with generation, because I'm about to break it down into like two main things: the younger generations and then the older generations. Now, before I say this, I'm not talking about all older generations. There are definitely people in the older generations that do already understand this. But for those who don't understand that, having these hateful mindsets and these negative mindsets about people who you don't even understand and really can't relate to, and teaching that to your offspring, your children, your whoever's in your home environment, your family, that will continue to create more negativity and division. So what we need to do specifically with older generations is retrain their mindsets. I want to credit Jane Elliott, an anti-racism activist who I had the opportunity to speak to multiple times. I met her in person. She gave me a lot of great advice. And so specifically, she was talking about how with retraining the mindset, it can lead to you understanding that our differences, being made to feel as if you're the other, clearly that's not a good feeling because it just makes you feel so isolated. That isolation is actually one of the negative effects of bullying. That isolation is a negative. So what we need to do is we need to retrain their mindsets to understand that these negative mindsets, that racism, homophobia, those microaggressions, that is something that continues to cause chaos and division and hate. We need to first start with that. And of course, you need to be open to having a conversation about that. And then just with younger generations, as well as all generations, actually, with this specifically, we need to be open to having this conversation in a safe space and a brave space. I get the brave space part from when I was also recently doing my workshop at the National Conference for Race Amity. And someone had mentioned, and shout out to them, but someone had mentioned how not only do we need a safe space, but we need a brave space. We need people who are not afraid to speak up when that space, which is already safe, they need to speak up. We need to speak up. We need to be open to seeing our differences. We cannot be blind to seeing each other's differences, because once we are blind to seeing each other's differences, that means that we won't really necessarily be educated on those differences. And of course, it's not a matter of, okay, there's one Black person in the room, so have that Black person educate all of these other white people in the room about the history of Black people. No, that's definitely not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we just need to be open to hearing our different positions on things. And by things, I mean like everything, but specifically when it comes to who we are and our experiences in life, we need to be open to hearing that and then figuring out a way, an unbiased way to come together. And yes, of course, I know humans have unconscious bias, but if we start to come up with that, start to retrain, if we start to see people for who we all are, which is beautiful, we are all flowers in the world's garden, beautiful flowers in the world's garden. We need to keep these things in mind when even attempting to make our world more of a beautiful place and unified place. Those are a lot of the different aspects that we need to become more unified.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's about understanding each other. And I think it's about, and I like the what you've said about a brave space of being able to ask questions of each other. Because I think often people can get very awkward. I think white people get very awkward about race. So, you know, we don't want to say something. So I'm not speaking for all white people. As a white person, it can be awkward because sometimes you don't want to say something that's out of turn or the wrong thing. And I think sometimes, and I'm curious on your opinion on this, sometimes I think it's okay to say, hey, I'm a white person here. I don't know what the appropriate thing to say is. Please tell me. You know, how do you feel about that conversation?
Okay, and everyone, this is just me personally speaking about myself before I even say anything. I actually really do. I appreciate it because you're not that I can't speak right now. Okay, so there have been multiple white people who specifically know about what I do, who have said to me, you know what, Devin, I really don't know what I should say. They've actually said, Devin, I'm honestly probably very ignorant, and please just whatever you feel comfortable with saying to me. I don't expect you to educate me on everything, but whatever you're comfortable with sharing, please let me know, because I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be ignorant, and I want to be open to loving and understanding all different types of people. So what you said about like saying, I don't understand, I think that's honestly a good place to start, because then we can figure out ways where we both can understand each other. And again, you don't need to educate everyone on the history of Black people, the history of Hispanic, the history of what we don't really need to. Well, correction, I'm not going to say we don't really need to, because I think that type of education is very important. But having one person tell me the history of all Black people, that's way too hard, because that's also like you don't know the history of all Black people. But being able to acknowledge the fact that you don't understand everything, I think that's honestly a beautiful thing. I know I don't know everything. Then again, I'm 19, but like still, I know I don't know everything. So it's just like being able to acknowledge the fact that you don't know everything and saying, you know what, I don't know everything, but I want to respect you. I
Yes.
don't know everything, but I accept you. Those are the types of things that we need to be a part of these safe and brave spaces. So those are, and again, those are my personal opinions on it. I understand that not everyone thinks the same, and I appreciate that not everyone thinks the same, because then that allows me to hear their point on that, and
Yeah.
then that allows us both to grow.
Yeah.
But that's what I really appreciate it when people are like, I really don't understand, so please, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, please educate me. I'm here and I'm going to listen to you. I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think it takes quite a lot of courage to be vulnerable enough to make yourself feel awkward in a situation. And I think that is where a lot of this tiptoeing, especially around race issues, happens, because there's awkwardness. And that makes it worse.
Yeah, actually, wait, I want to add one more thing onto that when you're saying awkward. So sometimes I think of it like this: awkward leads to fear because they don't like feeling awkward. Fear leads to showing itself through anger, and anger leads to chaos. So that's why there's so much. That's people naturally don't want to fear things, but they naturally do fear things. So their response to that possible trauma, that fear, is anger. And that anger can show itself through these different forms of bullying. People also don't realize that when it comes to fear, or when it comes to kind of like that realm, um, it's it's something that I'm trying to think of how I want to word this. When it comes to fear and how that leads to like anger and things alike, people don't understand that they are fearing a lot more than like what they actually know. So, oh, that's what I want to say. They fear what they don't understand. So when they don't understand things, it just kind of turns into, well, dang, I'm mad now because why don't I understand this? That's what I meant to say. So there's a lot, and people don't understand a lot of things. I'm definitely one of those people. Like, but there's stuff I don't understand. There's stuff I don't know, but I don't want to turn that into I'm angry about it. It's just that's a natural human response. I want to turn that into I want to learn about it. I want to question it. I want to figure it out in a positive light, not in a light where I'm asking someone questions that are actually microaggressions, that are actually micro assaults, that are actually micro whatever other micro stuff there is. Like, I don't want it to be that way. I want it to be, let's learn from each other, let's understand each other, and let's not fear each other, which will turn into being angry by each other. Let's not have that. Let's not have that.
Yep, I think we only have to look at what's happening with the conflicts in the world to see how othering people and fearing each other escalates into, like you've said, total chaos. Devin, what is one question you wish I'd asked you today?
Just tell me about your book, Devin Speaks Up.
Tell me about your book, please, and where we can find it.
Yeah, of course. Definitely. I'll tell you about it. Okay, so Devin Speaks Up is a children's anti-bullying book. I wrote it to show what bullying can look like through my personal bullying story. I wrote it because I want to educate others about what we was talking about today, being upstanders, as well as show unity and diversity. Even on the front cover of Devin Speaks Up. Okay, let's. Oh, wait. Okay. I have the book up, but my blur is on, so I'm going to quickly take the blur off. Okay, so even on the front cover of Devin Speaks Up, it has kids from all different walks of life, because I want to represent how we as humans are from all different walks of life. We are not one of us is the same, whether it's talking the same, or maybe even looking the same, or acting the same, walking the same. We have beauty within our differences. That's why we have kids in a heart formation, and then me in the middle, younger me, with my heart hands up. And so it gets this conversation about bullying started at a young age. Because if we start this conversation at a young age, will then lead to actually educating properly at that young age, so that it leads to less bullying in the future and more of, hey, don't do that. Don't be rude. But here's why you should not be rude. It's because, why don't you put yourself in that other person's perspective? Do you really think that you would want to be hated on for your skin color? Do you really think that you would want to be hated on because you're of this religion, this culture, ethnicity, sexuality, gender or gender expression, or size. No, you don't. So let's stop that mentality and let's actually educate ourselves. And on top of that, this book is a great way for parents or grandparents or teachers to educate their students in a very simplified way. I remember my most recent Devin Speaks Up book assembly. One of the kids, they raised their hand. It was question time, and they just raised their hand and they was like, Devin, I just like how it rhymes. So I'm like, okay, that kind of lets me know, like, oh, that's perfect. That's an additional thing. I wanted them to like how that rhymes. I wanted them to remember certain phrases in the book, always race to speak up against bullying. So yeah, that's a lot about Devin Speaks Up. And you can definitely get it on my website, which is racetospeakup.com, RACETOSPEAKUP.com. Yes, I did just spell it out. And then you can get it on like the shop page and it'll be right there.
Perfect. I will share that in the show notes. And I just wanted to add that I think it's so important when we're talking about having this book and taking it home and educating parents, because to come back to your point about a lot of bullying and othering behavior starts at home. It starts with what children are hearing happening in their households. It's what they're hearing from grandparents. It's what they're hearing from family. And I think the one thing, change happens often from the newest generation coming through. And I think it can filter backwards through older generations. And I think it's so important for people listening to remember that children pick up on what's going on at home. They pick up on nuances of conversations. They pick up on attitude. They pick up on biases, whether they're conscious or unconscious. And I think it's just so important to remember, as parents, we have a huge influence on the next generation of people who are coming up in the world, who are going to be working and be out there. And it's so important to remember we have an influence on that. So I love that your book is a way of being able to have your message going out to all generations. So well done. And I think it's just such a brilliant achievement that at 14, you started this organization and you've been doing this such important work. I mean, it really, it's fantastic. This has been such a nice conversation for me to have with you. It's so inspirational, and I really hope everyone listening to the podcast has enjoyed it as well. It's been really wonderful, Devin. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Thank you to your audience as well. But thank you so much, Emma. This really has been a great conversation for me as well.
Amazing. Thank you very much for listening, folks. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please drop me a message on Instagram at Emma O'Brien Coach, and you can also get in touch with Devin. I'll put all of the links in the show notes, so please do reach out to him as well. I'm sure he'd love your feedback on how you've enjoyed this podcast. So thank you, Devin, and thank you, folks, for joining me. I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please share with your friends and be sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. To find out more about my one-on-one coaching, please visit my website, which is emmaobriencoach.com. And remember, folks, when life gives you lemons, you can always choose another fruit. See you next time.